Today we're going to take a look at the ratio analysis for HP and Apple comparing the data from 2016 and 2017. For those of you that aren't aware, ratio analysis can be a very useful tool in analyzing companies' financial reports, especially against competitors or other similar branded companies in the industry to make informed decisions as an investor. So before we take a look, let me provide you with a little bit of background on the two companies that I chose. Apple is the first company, which is an American-based technology company most widely known for its products such as the iPad, iPhone, and Mac computers. They are based out of Cupertino, California, and were originally founded by three men, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. Today, the company is actually ranked the most valuable brand in the world. The second company I chose is HP, which is previously known as Hewlett-Packard and was formed in 2015. It's also an American-based technology company, but they're more widely known for their computers, printers, and supplies, with more of a focus on people that upgrade their computers frequently as well as gamers. Okay, so let's take a look at the ratio analysis. The first set of ratios that we're going to discuss are the liquidity ratios, which will be covering current ratio, cash ratio, and quick ratio. As you can see from the data in the PowerPoint presentation, HP's current ratio is just under 1.0, which could be an indication of financial trouble if the company were to run into a financial difficulty at a future point in time. However, it's also important to take into consideration how quickly their assets could be sold and turned into cash in order to prevent those cash flow issues from happening. Generally speaking, HP's ratio is extremely close to the 1.0 thresholds. That one could also state that they're still very well capable of covering their liabilities. It's also important to note that their current ratio also increased from 2016 to 2017, showing that they are maintaining, if not even improving, their ability to satisfy their liabilities. Apple's current ratio is over 1.0, which shows that they're very well capable of covering their liabilities. However, their ratio did slightly decrease from 2016 to 2017. While it's not something that I would be overly concerned with now, it's definitely a key point to watch over the next year or two. If the ratio were to continue to decline, it could be an indication that a potential financial struggle is either present or on the horizon. But when comparing the two at this point in time based off the ratios, Apple is more liquid than HP, as seen by the difference in the ratio for 2017. So moving on to the cash ratio, both companies are relatively low and in proximity to each other. It could potentially mean two things. It could mean that both companies have used their cash efficiently, or it could also mean that they're not making enough sales to have more cash. So when comparing the two companies against each other, though, HP does show a stronger cash value in respect to the current liabilities, with a difference of 11.1% for 2017. Another good way to analyze it would be to compare the cash ratios to the current ratios. But for 2017, HP has a difference of 0.684, whereas Apple has a difference of 1.075. So the last of the liquidity ratios that we're going to go over is the quick ratio. As described earlier with the current ratio, the general rule of thumb for the quick ratio is results greater than 1.0 show that the company is sufficiently operating to be able to meet their short-term obligations. Apple's quick ratio declined slightly from 2016 to 2017, whereas HP's ratio sustained itself but at a much lower rate than the 1.0. Apple continues to come out on top with 0.913 of every dollar of four liquid assets in 2017 going towards their financial obligations. All right, let's take a look at the solvency ratios, which will be debt ratio and debt to equity. So when looking at the debt ratio for the past 2 years, HP has decreased by a decent amount of 0.149. It could be a positive movement as a sign of stronger equity in the future. However, it is almost double the amount of Apple, coming in at 0.643 for 2017, telling us that they have just over twice as many assets as liabilities, resulting in a lower debt. This would indicate to us also that Apple appears to have a much stronger equity position, while HP would be considered a much greater risk when comparing the two. Now, when comparing debt to equity for HP and Apple, there's a very significant difference between the two. Considering the two companies are in the same industry, this could definitely be a concern that one of the companies could have a financial issue and not be able to meet their debt obligations. Both companies require a significant investment in order to fund product development, so banks and lenders would definitely look at this ratio often in order to ensure profitability before a company would go out of business. HP has a much higher debt to equity ratio than Apple, making Apple the business that's best at managing its liabilities to shareholder equity. So last but not least, let's take a look at our profitability ratios, which will be gross profit margin, return on assets, and net profit margin. The gross margin ratio is very different between the two companies. Both Apple and HP have maintained their ratios from 2016 to 2017, but Apple is in a much stronger position. For 2017, Apple is showing that for every dollar, 0.3847 is actually used to pay back expenses, where HP is only showing that 0.0068 is used out of every dollar. So this tells us that Apple is definitely better at purchasing inventory at a lower cost, as well as better at marking up their prices of their goods that they're selling while maintaining their competitiveness in the retail market. HP's return on assets has a significant decrease from 2016 to 2017, while Apple did maintain within a reasonable amount. When comparing the two companies to each other in 2017, their percentages show that HP has a more valuable business, but Apple is more efficient, coming in at 13.874%, which is just under the 6% higher. Is just under 6% higher than HP. The net profit margin, that also varies pretty greatly between HP and Apple, although individually they remain very stable between 2016 and 2017. In 2017, Apple is operating with an excellent net profit ratio that's 16.51% higher than HP. Typically, this would mean that Apple is exercising its product pricing very well, and it also means that they're effectively managing cost control also. While HP is still operating at a profit, it doesn't appear as though they are as effective at pricing or at cost control comparing to Apple. In conclusion, we have two very strong competitors in the technology industry. Both have their own strengths and weaknesses based off of their financial statements, but using the data that we've gone over today, as well as the presentation, I'd be curious to know which company would you choose to invest in and why?